Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about Infisical, a company that was basically hitting a dead end, made one massive change, and ended up securing a huge piece of the internet. And it all starts with a problem that pretty much every single developer has faced.
Okay, so to really get their story, you first have to understand the problem they solve, which is managing developer secrets. Now you can just think of these as the literal keys to the kingdom. They're the passwords, the API tokens, the credentials, all the stuff that lets different pieces of software talk to each other and access really sensitive data.
And these things are everywhere. The second you have more than one person on a team, things get messy. How do you securely give the new engineer the database password? What happens when you have to change an API key that's being used by like a dozen different services? It is a massive, massive headache.
And look, this wasn't some theoretical business idea for them. This was a pain the founders of Infisical felt firsthand. They were just students at Cornell, hacking away on side projects, and they kept hitting this same wall. You know, that classic way of storing secrets in a little text file, a .env file? It just doesn't scale. And they thought, man, if this is so hard for us, it must be a complete nightmare for actual companies.
So like any good engineer, they decided to solve their own problem. They built a solution, and their first go at it was pretty straightforward. A closed-source tool that other developers could pay for.
And the idea had legs. It was promising enough to get them into Y Combinator, which, as you know, is a huge stamp of approval. It proved they were working on a real problem that smart people thought was worth solving. They had the idea, they had the momentum.
But after that initial buzz, things just kind of stalled out. The company hit a wall. Growth went flat. The explosive adoption they were hoping for just wasn't happening. They were at a crossroads.
So, when you hit a plateau like that, you have to make a choice. And for them, it meant something about their core strategy had to change, and change big.
So what was the answer? It wasn't some new feature, it wasn't a clever marketing trick. The key to unlocking their growth was actually an answer to a question their Y Combinator interviewer had asked them on day one. So why aren't you guys open source?
And that was it. That was the decision. They decided to take their core product, the very thing they were trying to get people to pay for, and just give it away. They made the code public for anyone, anywhere to see, to use, and to build on.
Now, the thinking here was actually brilliant. They realized that when you're asking a company to trust you with their most sensitive information, trust is everything. Going open source meant any developer could look under the hood and see exactly how it worked. It let big companies run Infisical on their own servers, giving them total control. And, it turned their users into a community.
And the result of this pivot wasn't small. It was immediate, and it was absolutely massive. It was like they opened the floodgates.
The developer community just fell in love with it. GitHub stars are basically a developer's vote of confidence, and Infisical went from 0 to 5,000 stars in less than 3 months. That's insane. Today, they have over 18,000. It's just undeniable proof that they built something developers genuinely wanted.
And that developer love turned into absolutely staggering usage. Today, Infisical processes over 10 billion secrets every single month. I mean, let that number sink in for a second. They are now securing what they call a non-trivial part of the world's digital infrastructure. And this right here perfectly explains their growth. It's all bottom-up. A developer uses the free version for a side project, thinks it's amazing, and then brings it with them to their new job, which just so happens to be a Fortune 50 company. That's literally how they landed some of their biggest customers. So this whole bottom-up, community-driven approach gave Infisical an entirely new way to compete in a market that was dominated by these huge, slow-moving giants.
And here's where they really shine: speed. The old-school tools are notoriously complex. The average time it takes to get one of them set up is a mind-blowing 21 months. Think about that, almost 2 years. Infisical, on the other hand, was built for developers. You can be up and running in a few weeks. It's a complete game changer.
So how do they pull that off? Well, part of their technical secret sauce is something called stateless architecture. All that means is that the application itself doesn't hold on to any memory from one interaction to the next. Every single request is treated as if it's the very first time it has ever seen it.
And here's why that's a superpower. Their competitors' tools are often stateful. They're like these big, complicated databases. If you need to handle more traffic, it's a huge, complex project. With Infisical, because it's stateless, you just make more copies of it. You just spin up another container. It's unbelievably simple and incredibly easy to scale.
But okay, solving secret management was just the beginning. Now that they've built this massive open-source community, their ambition is way, way bigger.
They're building out a whole security platform. They're adding certificate management, secure SSH access, even encryption as a service, the whole 9 yards. The goal is to become the go-to open-source platform for pretty much all of a developer's security needs. And this brings us to the really wild, forward-looking part. For decades, security has been about secrets for humans and secrets for applications. But now we've got a totally new player in the game, AI agents. These AIs are going to need API keys and credentials too. They need to access resources. And that leaves us with a huge question. Who is going to secure the secrets for our new AI-powered world? Infisical is betting it's going to be them.